Welcome to the fourth season of Heard, Afros Audio Interview Series. I'm your host, Talib Jasir, and today my guest is Blake Johnson. What's up, man? How you doing?
What's happening, man? How are you?
I'm good. I'm great now. Looking forward to this conversation with you. So, for those folks out there who don't know, who are you and what do you do in audio?
All right. So my name is Blake. I guess my stage name at this point is the Podfather. That's kind of the name that I was given in podcasting. I'm an overall creative podcast producer and mental health advocate. My work in podcasting up to this point, it surrounds me producing my podcast. I've helped produce other podcasts. My personal podcast is Diary of a Mad Black Man. Centers around my life and my lived experiences dealing with mental health. I also interview other people and have conversations around anything that centers mental health. I really have had a hand in bringing Black creatives together, podcasters specifically. And so that's something else that I'm wrestling around a title for per se, but I just like to bring the creatives together at the end of the day. So that's really a little bit about what I do. Yeah.
All right, that's what's up. And so let's go a little bit deeper. Talk to me about Diary of a Mad Black Man. When you started it, why you started. You already said you're a mental health advocate, dealing with your own mental health issues. So bring that to fruition for us.
I'll start at the beginning. I released my first episode, actually October 25th, 2019. And at that time, when I released that first episode, my whole idea in podcasting at the time was I just had some stuff to share. The specifics of what I wanted to share and how I was going to share it evolved over time as I started to do it, as I started to interview people. Then I made an Instagram for it, started using Facebook groups, one which was healing, understanding myself, my mental health journey, what I was dealing with. I was dealing with now that I could speak to was grief, coupled with depression and anxiety. And I was also feeling alone in my creative journey as well. Diary of a Mad Black Man was a two-folded thing that helped me to heal myself, but also find community and people around me that like the things I like, that like podcasting, that were just really, I guess you could say, open-minded people. They were podcasters. We always had deep intellectual conversations around a large variety of topics. So around that time when I really started getting deeper into podcasting, I created the Black Podcast Club, which is basically a collective of podcasters and creatives designed to really just support, motivate, and uplift each other. So those two platforms that I created in the podcasting space is really what led me to be the man that I am today. And I really want to lean more into what Diary of a Mad Black Man did for me. I'm writing a book on this, so it's hard to summarize everything now, but I think in a nutshell, what I can say is it helped me to understand the difference between mental health, mental illness versus mental health challenges versus disorders. It helped me to understand that I was a part of a system overall that created these different titles and things like that. And what I can honestly say right now, as a Black man, I know that this system was really designed against me. And I say that with confidence because the American Psychological Association issued an apology to Black and Indigenous people in America, I want to say in 2021, for their role that they played in racism and upholding white supremacy and all the different kind of issues that now we're seeing in the field of mental health. So creating Diary of a Mad Black Man, wanting to share my own personal journey about what I was dealing with mental health. And at that time, like I said, I didn't really have the language or understanding around it, but it led me down a path to understand myself as a person, like really my humanity. And ever since I took a step away, I began to actually apply them to my life and began to practice them. It began to be something more that I wasn't more so talking about on the podcast or talking about with other creatives, these things that I had learned about mental health, spirituality, how to take care of myself, eat right, diet, all these things. I just began to really apply them to my life. And now I'm in a chapter where I'm moving into the next chapter of Diary of a Mad Black Man, me being a creative and even the Black Podcast Club and all these different ideas that I have. I'm now ready to continue that journey in executing these ideas and making things happen for not only myself, but Black creatives. Yeah, I think hope that kind of answers your question about what Diary of a Mad Black Man is, what it did for me, where I'm at now.
Yeah, for sure. And also definitely connected how Diary of Black Man and the Black Podcast Club work together in a sense. And in ways, if we consider the evolution of yourself as a person, as a creative, but also in learning more about yourself in this process, it all matters. It's like for a lot
Yeah,
of us, we are just, for context, this is the wilderness that we're in. We're
absolutely.
trying to find our way not only out of the wilderness, but find ourselves inside the wilderness. Why am I here? What's the path for me to take
Yeah, yeah,
to get out or to navigate? And I think it's really important what you said, and something I think is true for a lot of podcasters. And I say podcasters because this is an expression. You're actively speaking out loud and expressing things that you believe, experience, have lived, and that you think. And when it comes to that, some people do it very intentionally, which is the diamond of Mad Black Man, which is your intent is to go through this process of mental wellness. And some people discover mental wellness in simply expressing and not even knowing that that's a path that they're on while they're simultaneously creating and expressing.
that's actually a realization that I had probably recently, probably in the last 6 months. I was like, wow, this idea of duality is something that I'm just wrapping my mind around. But I've been doing two things, which is developing myself as a creative, but also healing myself at the same time. And it wasn't recently I connected the dots, like I'm doing both all at once. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Doing the work all along, especially back to the wilderness analogy, you can feel lost. There's too much going on around you and you don't know what's in front of you, where to go, how to navigate, if this way is dangerous, if this way is safe, right? And I say that to say that you also, when you're in motion and you're showing up all the time and doing the work, you don't recognize that you are doing both at the same time. You're navigating, you're in the process, even if you don't see it as that. Congratulations to you for even having the bravery, the courage to go through this experience with an audience, because that's its own thing. A lot of times the isolation keeps us in the wilderness,
Yeah,
but also keeps other people in the wilderness because they don't have a goalpost. They don't have a North
yeah.
Star from someone else's experiences.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because that's something that I'm still dealing with. I'll probably always be dealing with, which is this idea of having an audience. You never really know who's watching you. You never really know who's
Yeah.
listening to you. And I reached a point in my journey as far as actually podcasting that I couldn't keep showing up in front of my audience, faking, hey, everybody, I'm okay. And no, I'm gonna say, no, nigga, it's not okay. I'm not
Yeah.
okay.
Word up.
And so it
Word
got
up.
to a point to where even when that was like, nah, I can't do this no more, because I think something that I do know about podcasting is everybody performs a little bit. Everybody gets on
Yeah.
the camera, they get on their mic, and they're on recorded. But at the end of the day, I recognize that I'm a very charismatic person that can put on a shirt and tie and go to a boardroom meeting just like I could go to the club with my homegirls and turn
Yeah.
up a section. So I have that duality, but also knowing that podcasting is a space that I don't have to show up any other way than how I want to. This is a space that I created. This is a space that I made for myself, and everybody around me accepts me exactly as I am. So how often do I show up? Do I show up
Yeah.
mad as hell and ready to cry type shit, or do I still show up with some sort of like demeanor or poise to myself? So that's something else
Yeah.
that I'm still dealing with.
Yeah, for sure. You learn how to be, man, and that's a part of life in general. And that's the point of even this series, is that we are people who happen to podcast. We're people
Mhm.
first when we're experiencing life first. So you are using audio as the container, and obviously any of us can tell our stories 100 different ways. Why did podcasting become the format you chose to commit to?
That's a good question. The auditory experience, listening, understanding has always been just something about me that I enjoy. I think I'm a more of a listening. I can listen. I'm a visual person too, but just listening, audiobooks, listening to podcasts, what drove me to eventually start to create my own podcast. And I think what it's done for me the most is it's allowed me to really practice that speaking element. It's open to what you do in one-on-one talk therapist, but just the art of storytelling, sharing my perspective, it grew to be something that became a part of who I am. I found solitude in it, I guess you could say. I found a lot of peace in podcasting, and just something about listening to myself back as well. There's a lot of diary entries that I've recorded that I never released. There's some things I recorded that will never be released. The process of going back and listening to the things that I said is like, you know how they say if you write something down, you remember it better. It's
Yeah,
kind of
for
like that
sure.
same ideology behind it's like going back and speaking it out loud, processing my, but then going back and listening to what I said. It's like sometimes I really be surprised at the shit I be saying. I'm like, damn, that sounds really profound. Like I didn't, even try to make it sound like that. But then there are other times I'm just like, bro, what you just said was some bullshit for real. Get yourself together. So it's really helped me to see myself and hear myself from a different perspective. So I think that's probably one of the things I love the most is really going back and listening and hearing myself and processing my thoughts in a different way.
Seeing your growth, where you're stagnant, it's the measurement of self that doesn't need an external lens. And I think that's the most important thing for all of us, even when it comes to creation and expression, is that the beginning and the end of it is you. Forget everybody else. And what does this experience do for you specifically? And then allow it to be something for someone else.
Yeah. Something else I want to add too is that's what I started to experience when I was doing interviews with people. When I did my first couple of interviews, when I would hear somebody else's story through, and I'm actually thinking of somebody that I interviewed very early in my podcasting career, and it was centered around domestic violence. And listening to this woman tell her story was like, I remember sitting there having personal flashbacks and triggers my own experience with witnessing domestic violence and things like that. But I began to almost experience what I'm pretty sure a lot of people who actually do tune in to listen to my podcast experience, which is just like this feeling of really hearing somebody's story and experiencing it with them. So it just really shaped the dynamics of, again, just podcasting, listening to people's stories. It just began to be something that I just really enjoyed. And it was also therapeutic to me too, because I do like to read. I do like stories. I like thrillers and psycho thrillers and things like that. So heavy topics and things that some people may not feel comfortable talking about, I actually just realizing recently that I just feel comfortable talking about shit that most people don't like to talk about. So that's a gift and a curse at the same time.
And it's important. I'm of a belief that if it exists in this society, whatever it is, then it gets to be represented. And while it may be hard for someone to listen to something that is uncomfortable or is a societal ill or something that gives a secondhand embarrassment or whatever it is that people go through, there are others that completely relate. It's their life, it's their experience, and they want to know that there's someone else out there that has experienced it also. And so it gets to be represented. And I think it's important that we are those people in the world right now in podcasting that can tell and bring forth stories that otherwise may not be spoken about in traditional media. When did you realize you weren't just making content, but you were building something bigger than you?
Honestly, when did I realize I was building something bigger than me? I would say within the last year. Really, it was the holiday season last year, around my birthday time last year in the spring, that I began to wrap my mind around what would it take for me more intentional with the decisions that I was making and how my life was going. I found myself back in Atlanta again. And this time I didn't resist the idea of coming back. I literally was like, wherever the money goes, where I get the next opportunity to get a steady, that's where I'm going. And so since I've been back here, I've really been reflecting a lot on what is it about Atlanta, or what is it about how I evolved in Atlanta that keep drawing me here, what's going on. And then I started to really look at things I had done creatively, going back and actually listening to episodes from the pandemic, really being in a very reflective space of just what now? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I got a good job. I got to restate the basic check boxes in life, but what next? And listen to some episodes from season 4 of my podcast, my first pod album, and some of the episodes that, like I said, I never released, but just some of the audio recordings I have of myself during the pandemic. And like after all the protests around George Floyd happened and everything around Ray Sharp, I literally have personal diaries and vlogs from that time. And it wasn't until I'm looking at this 5 years later, yo, this is some shit that can literally be a part of humanity forever as historical facts, artifact of the year 2020. Yes, the racial injustice. Yes, all the things that we went through as Black people in this country with George Floyd, Ray Sharp Brooks, and the list of names of people that I could just name off from that year alone. I recognized how proud and valuable the things that I created during that time are, and how much more valuable they will be after I'm no longer here. And so it was in this past year, really unpacking a lot of this stuff. And it was like, at this point, I'm a part of history. This shit going down forever. I might as well get write it. And so I really recognize that, yo, like, this is really bigger than you right now. Fuck how you feel. Knows you was depressed during a psych ward before. Like, who cares? Like, you're a part of history, and you're going to continue to make your history. People will be able to back and look at Iron Man and hear my voice, hear what I was doing, hear what I was experiencing, and get a firsthand account of a black man in America living in Atlanta around the time, like the sirens in the background at the hotel. I really realized what I had done, and that was really the catalyst that led me like, yo, I don't know how many bitches get comfortable with being camera, but it seemed like everybody on camera with their podcast now. You really got to get with it. But at the end of the day, true to myself and find my way to that point where I'm in studios and doing what everybody else is doing. But I also recognize that I don't have to do that if I don't want to. I can still carve my own lane and do what I want to do. If I like audio only, I don't ever have to get on the camera. You know what I'm saying? Am I open to more to it now than I was 3 years ago? Of course. But I can still create this lane however I want to create it. So I was like, fuck it, let me just start dropping episodes, start recording episodes, and literally this is all about the past 60 days. I just been back in my creative mode. I got my little studio set up. You see the mic, dusting everything off, and I'm just back, just doing every day. Any idea I get, write it down, execute it the best I can. But I think the part that is different about this time now is I'm not holding on to nothing. I'm not releasing this shit as soon as it go out. However it look, the video don't look, the audio ain't perfect. Oh, my message is the same. My intent is there. I can't control the impact, but let's go. So that's really how I recognize how important it is that I was doing, and even the work that I still have to do.
For sure. That's liberation, man. That's a creator's freedom to just simply like it enough for yourself to say however the world receives it. And of course, you have an intention, but however you receive it is second to how I want to create it and publish it and put it out there for it to be received. And again, that is such an important space to be in as a creator, because so many of us live in our heads, allow external measurement to dictate how we move, and hold back our whole selves when what the world needs is our whole selves.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
It's like you say, I feel held myself back for a long time. So the past couple of years, fear of judgment. And really, I think that's probably the only fear that I've been able to really unpack, is just the fear of judgment of other people. Of, oh, look at Blake. Like, he used to do this. Or, oh, I know Blake from back in the day. We used to go to high school together. So those fears are no longer present, per se. It's not that I don't have hesitations or reservations, but now it's, I can't think of any other way to say this, but I don't give a fuck what anybody has to say or how anybody feels. And it just is what it is, because I truly recognize that it's bigger than me. It's not about me. It's not necessarily about my story, although it is. At this point, it ain't even about me no more. So whatever it is, what it is. If we have a conversation about it, we talk about it. So that's where I'm just with a lot of things in life.
Yeah, it gets to a point, man. It gets to a point where, and that's something beyond what we think people may be holding on to when it comes to us specifically, or where they may be holding us to inside of our own growth. The point is you, at the end of the day, how far you're willing to go to say it is what it is. That was what it was. I'm still here and I'm still moving and I'm still evolving, and you still judging and you still criticizing from the sidelines. Great job. I'm gonna keep moving. I'm gonna keep pushing.
More power.
And yeah, it gets to a point where it's an evolution, it's a process. And so I want to say that because, as you've already mentioned, it was a process to come to this space in your life and your own creativity. It's been a process for myself. It's a process for all of us, but that should never be what stops us from starting and from maintaining the work until we get to the point where it really is easier and it really is a more liberated experience than however it once was at any point in your process. It's your prerogative. It's your opportunity. I appreciate that, man. So you're very clear that you care about Black liberation through creativity, and you specifically advocate for mental wellness for Black men. What made that personal for you besides the obvious?
Besides the obvious, there's a lot of things come to mind right now. I really began to see how a lot of people around me were struggling mentally, but they didn't recognize that they needed some help too. I began to really recognize how mental health in and of itself impacts every single person. Like once I really realized that everybody has mental health, it's not just me. If you're a human being and you're alive, you have mental health. Once I realized that, that's when it became like a mission to me, because I knew as a Black man, I know our plight is very different and unique, but that's the same for Latino men, women, children, like every demographic, they're going to process things differently because of how we show up in the world, what we look like. The thing that
and what
I
we
find that
experience.
as well, because some people that their therapy are different, you know what I'm saying? But without going super deep into it, I saw it as more of a thing that was about humanity through this. It's not just about the plight of being a Black man with mental health. Is that I'm a human being, my mental health. I'm saying, so that adds another layer to it versus just me being in like a more compartmentalized, I mean, like Black male mental health. This is mental health, and this is tied to my humanity. This is something that as a human being walk face this earth, you're going to deal with. So that really became real to me. It became something that's more than just about how I identify.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's real, and it's a real conversation that needs to be happening. Having worked with and being a part of groups of Black men in my own cohorts and my mastermind groups, you start to learn that there's a lot of isolation that begins to happen, especially in a society of posturing, performance, and generally not understanding what the hell is going on. There's so many years that you don't even have the vocabulary for what's going on.
Yeah.
And then once you get the vocabulary, it's deeper than that. We start talking about vulnerability,
Mm-hmm.
and vulnerability is actually a surface word to what's actually going on, going down. You start talking about trauma, and that's actually a surface word for let's go deeper. 2 years ago, I experienced a friend, a brother of mine, committing suicide in between the last two conferences. And it takes a lot to understand that, wish that maybe there was more that could have been done, or more that could have been said, or more attention that could have been given. And then also recognizing that we're all out here living our own lives, experiencing it in our own ways, never knowing the enough threshold for any one person. It is really important to share these stories out loud. Some of us make it, some of us don't, out of this wilderness we talked about earlier. And it's a hurtful thing. I myself have dealt with those struggles. We're not alone in this. And so while people may assume our lives because they don't know our lives, it's deep. It gets deep. The ability to continue to show up for others, it's not small. It's not small at all. Once again, I'm just saying to you, I appreciate the work that you have put in for this. And I also appreciate that you continue to choose life and creativity and being here, because it's not an easy thing for any of us to do, especially those of us who deal with mental health and illnesses.
Yeah. Thank you. I really appreciate you saying that, because one, it makes me feel good. Two, a privilege I'm recognizing every day as how privileged it actually is.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are often times we see the headlines of people who, I don't know where this term came into, like you're gonna have to go unalive
Yeah.
themselves, fall victim to suicide. And I know that being able to still speak about it, to speak about it as something that was in my past, is a privilege that I know that there's a lot of people wish that they had, or people wish loved ones had.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I don't think a lot of people around me recognize what a privilege it is for me to even still be here. You know what I'm saying? I think
For
that
sure.
there's certain dates on the calendar that roll around, and I don't want to get deep, but I do say this because this is real. There are certain times of the year that come around for me that I know what y'all could have potentially been going through around time every single year. And so I recognize that I have the power by still existing and living and sharing my story to prevent other people from potentially going through that, whether they recognize it or not. And so, me talking about my mental health and the things that I've gone through has fractured a lot of. I know it's still got a lot of people looking at me sideways. You saw me once in this broke and decrepit of no longer wanting to be here, but then literally the next week you see me on Instagram turning up, acting like nothing ever happened. But that's my life. That's literally what I've been through. And for people who have gone through severe bouts of depression or anxiety or dealt with actual ideation in their life, but they understand that. And I find that recent doctors that I had, they made the comment that a lot of times nobody really understands mental health until they go themselves, or they have to walk with somebody else going through challenges. And I say that because there are a lot of times where people I really loved and cared about pushed me away. They felt, oh, you going through that shit. I ain't trying to feel none of that. You know what I'm saying? And on one side of that, I can everybody who protects their peace. But at what are you going to really show for somebody that you love and you care about, and let them know that no matter what you're going through, I'm going to sit right beside you. And a lot of times it was, for me, creatives. It was casters. It was showing up at a conference that I never thought that I would be able to even attend, and being on the stage with you and Latrice and Afrika. These are moments that came into my life at times when I think that I was going to make it to next week. Yeah, I ain't gonna go too much more in depth into that, but that's why I will always continue to find a space to share my story where my student wants to be heard, because I understand the privilege that I have, and even being able to share my story regardless of how it may affect people. So, yeah, that's my
sure. Yeah, for sure. Thank you, man. And you titled the podcast "Diary of a Mad Black Man" very intentionally. So why that name, and what do you want people to feel when they press play?
Gotta give credit where credit is due. Shout out to Tyler Perry. But Diary of a Mad Black Woman was one of these movies that I remember watching it being like, damn, that's really what women be going through. And when I was thinking of a name for the podcast, I was like, man, Diary of a Mad Black Man, because nobody, I remember around this talk, man, don't nobody talk about what we going through, or like what we really be going through. There was nothing out there. And even still to this day, I haven't come across anything that really has told multifaceted picture of what Black men go through in America, or what we go through in relationships, or as fathers, or as all the different titles that we have. And so I knew in sharing my story, I knew I wasn't, I think everybody, they say, not wrapped up tight, you know what I'm saying? I knew I had a couple things that just made me awkward or out of the norm, but I Mad Black Man just felt very fitting. It had a nice ring to it. Again, I was really inspired by Tyler Perry and what he did, and also him and like Oprah and other people like that, just because of how they have this bigger vision, bigger, larger than life, like personality and the things that they do and create. So when it was time to type in the title for the podcast, I was like, Diary of a Mad Black Man. And every time I told somebody, everybody was like, oh, that's it. I was like, yeah, no, I made that up myself. Thank you.
And what's great about the work that you're doing, and for any podcast or book or whatever it is, when it comes to mental health, and specifically for our demographic, there's no single story. And I think that's an important thing to always recenter ourselves with, that everybody's experience is a bit different. It may have some similarities, but they're going to have some differences. It's going to be impacted by environment, socioeconomics, the people that you're around, the experiences that you have. It all matters. And American mental health issues are unique to America. And then there are certain countries that have different sets of mental health issues due to their environment and culture and traditions and what have you. Someone out there somewhere can relate to it some way. And yeah, I've felt mad before in my life, and not understanding that angry mad and both mad, like manic. And you know, so it's all of these things, but my reasons would be different from yours, different generation, different upbringing, different all of these things. So it's important to have these conversations that relate specifically to you. And then the guests that you have on, they bring their own experiences and everything to the mic and telling their story. It's really good to I think the expansionness in mental health in podcasting has been really a good thing for the medium, because a lot of traditional media where you can't just pick up a microphone, press record, and publish it on your own as an independent, that limits the amount of stories that are actually out there and gets told. I really want to encourage more people to talk about what's been going on with their lives, while also keeping ownership for wherever you don't want people to know, because everything ain't everybody's damn business either. You know what I mean?
That's factual. That's factual as well.
Yeah.
Because I would say since the pandemic has really been a new ecosystem like podcasting. And what I find is that it's much more necessary even now to have a lived experience shit. Because I really look at my life as like a case study now. The shit that I've literally physically gone through in hospitals and psych wards with psychiatrists, like this shit needs and deserves to be studied. Not just because it's me, but because this has been my actual experiences going to a doctor, taking these medications, because these are all have been my experiences. And I was talking to my therapist or somebody that I had, and they were saying how little information even in the field about Black lived experiences surrounding mental health. A lot of language and stories and materials and things that are created around mental health do not. And it's going to be in for me to continue to share my story, because hopefully that leads to policies and laws being changed around developmental disability services, because that's something that I'm now very intrigued with, because my rights were violated 4 years ago. I guess it's been almost 2 years now. I don't know. Understanding that deep down inside of me, there's a liberator, a revolutionary activist type dude. And if this is my fight, this is what it is. If this is my role in the movement, as they say, I'll take that and I'm gonna run with it, because that's really what I feel has been activated in me recently. And you can never take my story away from me. Nobody can ever take my experiences away from me. That will always be truthful and valid, regardless of what laws, diagnoses, or policies exist. So yeah.
And one of the things that I think is super important, and just having a cohort last quarter for podcasters, and again this year, just thinking about some of those creators who deal with mental health and being able to adjust work and programming and creativity around the fact that I understand that there is something that may be more intense in your creative process than someone else that's not maybe dealing with a mental health issue or trauma or anything in that moment. And so working around that and being risk aware for people and their mental health when we do our programs and stuff like that, when we do our work, I think that's important. It's something that we all get to put more care around. But I want to talk to you about those creatives who don't always feel good, don't always feel up to getting on the mic, feel like it's too big, it's too much for me to even stand up sometimes, and they lay in the bed and create. So what is it for you that allows you to continue to show up, and how do you navigate those days when it's really even tough for you? And these are to those creators that can relate.
To be honest, depending on the day of the week, depending on the time of the year, depending on how I'm really feeling, it's going to depend on how I did. I think one of the first things I always try to do when I'm feeling like doing something that I also feel like I'm doing is I evaluate, is this necessary for what I'm trying to achieve right now? Is this in alignment with where I see myself go in the future? Usually for me recently, almost everything is a yes. I don't do anything I don't want to do. I don't go anywhere I don't want to go. So 9 times out of 10, if I put something on my calendar to do, especially if it's for an outlet or something that I want to do, to me, I see it more as like my responsibility to eventually be able to get my story out there more. I see it as next steps towards having laws and policy changed around mental health. Something else I do is I pretty much at this point, I'm the judge, jury, thing in between. If I want to only do audio, I'm only doing audio. If that means Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeart are only 3 places you can go and listen to my podcast, then that's where you need to go to listen. And I'm not going to put any extra pressure on myself to go and start a YouTube channel, or start doing videos, or to start doing things that I don't really feel comfortable doing. Me saying that this is okay, being okay with saying, for example, I made a post on Threads like, why y'all saying y'all have podcasts if you only have a YouTube channel? And it was like the little back and forth. Everybody's like, who gives a fuck if it's not even a podcast? And kind of hateful ass comments came through. I didn't know who they was talking. I'm like, no, don't even know me. I ain't finna go there with you. But
Yeah.
that's really me though, because in my perspective, and from what a podcast is, it's an audio file that's listened to or downloaded. So this visual aspect to it is new, and I feel like that's where I feel like YouTube appropriated podcast, but that's a whole other day because I see how everything is necessary video. I see how it can be beneficial, but just because it's beneficial to you doesn't mean that I have to do it in order to feel like I have a successful podcast. Just because you can't type Diary Mad Black Man in on YouTube doesn't mean that my podcast isn't successful. Doesn't mean that I'm not over here creating dope shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I really now and just in a space, if I feel it's good and I'm complete, everybody else is or critique about it really don't even phase me for real.
To your point, man, I like to call them vlogs or vodcasts versus a
Yeah.
podcast that's an actual RSS feed. But to each his own at this point. I'm a advocate for creative prerogative. Do what you want, but it's a vodcast or a vlog, not a podcast. But anyway, it's all good. And we have to be able to discern as creators at this point, just like you said, what's for you and what's not for you, what you want to do, what you don't want to do. The path of least resistance is the most important thing. Whatever's going to keep you creating is where you need to be. And if video isn't it, then video isn't it. But also understanding that there's evolutions to anything, to any industry, to any medium, and what have you. So it's adapting to time for those of you who are with it. But again, the path of least resistance is where a creator should always be, because the point is that you get it out. That's the point. However you get it out. So as we close this up, you said creators should pay attention to exactly what we were just talking about, what feels good inside when they create, and follow that. How do you know when something is truly the good feeling versus just comfort, ego, or avoidance?
What's coming to mind is like when you go back to it over and over again and it amplifies, right? And so something I experienced recently is I'm a post and delete type of person on social media. I will say some wild shit and I would delete that shit 5 minutes later or the next day or next week or whatever. So one of the things that I've done with my podcast, even my Instagram page, is like I've archived a lot of the posts that I once had. I tried to, this is when Instagram was like perfect squares and like you can make this general scroll of your page like a certain pattern and shit like that. So I was really trying to like play with that. So what I did recently was I went back and I looked at all these archived posts and things that I had said and things that I had posted and like floored as some of the shit that I was saying during 2020 and 2020. It's like, how were you on one hand posting shit like this online and then getting offline and feeling so fucking terrible? That's really where I'm at with even like my own person's journey. Like, how are you posting shit like that, but you were at night feeling like this? You know what I'm saying? It's still something I'm wrestling with, but it really just helped me to go back and look and reflect. And it's like, now I have so much more mental clarity on a regular basis. Honestly, I'm anticipating what I can create now from this chapter moving forward, because there were times in the past when I was heavy, you know, daily regular content going out, post episodes or whatnot. I was feeling good about what I was doing, but it was when all that stopped that I was feeling so terrible. You know what I'm saying? So now I have much more balance in life. I have much more peace and clarity within myself. I don't need none of this shit. You know what I'm saying? As far as like podcasting or creative is concerned, I feel like I don't need this podcast shit, but I want it because I love it. And I do need it in a sense because it's where I feel the most authentic. It's been the one space I've been able to show up, feel, and be able to navigate inner turmoil that I'm dealing with or was dealing with at different times. And I'll share this too as we wrap up, like speaking of podcast movement. And you know a lot about what I went through personally behind the scenes. I won't go too in depth. There was a moment where it was like, fuck, my life is falling the fuck apart right now. But I got to get on this stage. I got to share my story. I got to show up. Regardless of how I feel right now, I know getting on this stage and being clear about what I get on the stage and say and showing up and being present in this moment is going to allow me to not have no more moments where my life is falling apart and I'm in a situation like this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think about moments, and there's a lot of moments that I had like that over the career that like now I'm looking forward to being able to get off a stage comfortable and really be able to go and celebrate and be able to go and keep going and going to the next thing and the next thing and not always feeling like I'm going through such extreme high moment, but then I come crashing down immediately right after. So that's what I'm looking forward to in this next chapter of what I'm creating now.
Yeah. It also shows you what you can move through. I know for me, it's like when things move forward in the worst of the situations, it's like, wow, I can no longer tell myself what's not possible because clearly it's possible. I move through it each time. And so I liken it to airplane turbulence. The worse it is and we survive, I'm like, okay, that's new information. Now I know that it could be that bad. And we still up in the air. Cool, thank you. You know what I mean? Without having that information, the next one I'm thinking we falling out the sky. And so it's always information that we get, and that's the beauty of unfolding and continuing to live and choose to experience life and move through it, because it shows you, it really does show you who you are, what you can go through and move through, and what's possible for your life, man. So I'm just grateful that you're still doing the work, you're still creating, and that we have more opportunities to learn from your own experience, because it's necessary. Because the fact that you exist means that you matter, and that means your stories matter. So again, man, thank you for the work that you're doing. I know that as you're working through creating the podcast more, you're also back into your bag with the Black Podcast Club. So if you want to mention anything about that before we roll out, please feel free.
Man, as this Diary of a Mad Black Man is concerned, just tap in and listen anywhere. Anybody listen to podcasts, Diary of a Mad Black Man, type that in. Find me on Instagram, Diary of a Mad Black Man. As far as the clubs, I feel like this is going to be a year of rebirth in a sense for the club. I know my pod sister Shadi, she's playing in a couple of live shows down in Birmingham. I have been what I call my club members. We've been getting back together, just really feeling the vibe, seeing where everybody's at. I went hard with pushing the business side of Black Podcast Club, and now I'm like, yo, get together, hang out like how I was in the beginning and see where things going. So I'm really, as far as the Black Podcast Club, Diary of a Mad Black Man, it's a brand new slate, but I've freshly cleaned it off, and I'm just looking to see how things unfold in the future. So that's where I'm with those two things right now, and just looking forward to continue to evolve and enjoy life the best of my abilities. That's really it.
Tell people where they can find you on social media and online.
On social media, you can find me at Diary of a Mad Black Man on Instagram. If you want to follow my personal Podfather, PODFATHER, with a couple underscores after that. If you want to follow that, yeah, Diary of a Mad Black Man.
Anything else you want to leave with the people before I let you go?
I know it's cold outside. You can't necessarily touch grass, but turn the phone off. As much as I love social media and the content shit, one of the things I love to do is just to turn it off and just decompress and take a breather. So that's what I would just say. Just separate and be one with your humanity and yourself as best as you can.
All right, man. Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate this conversation.
Man, Talib, it's been dope.
All right. Take care.
All right, man.